Good morning, everybody who's joining us so far. It looks like we don't have as big of a crowd today. Maybe people will join us shortly. But let's get started. Just just briefly, I wanted to let you know that we're going to try and keep this meeting to 1 hour because we are offering a town hall per phase 3 times. We want to make sure that those who are contributing to this, that we don't take advantage of their time. So we're going to keep today to 1 hour. I'll first make some introductions as to who is on the Executive DNA Committee. We do not have two people present today, but we do have Chuck Klein, who is our first vice president. He retired in July of 25 from BASF Corporation with over 29 years of service. His last position was Global Development Manager for General Insect Control, which he held for 12 years. He has a Bachelor in Science in Entomology from Texas A&M University and a Master's Science and a PhD in Livestock Entomology from the University of Arkansas. Ann McCabe, who is not on the call today, who is our second vice president. She has a Bachelor's of Science in Geology from UCLA and a Master's in Education with Technology emphasis from Pepperdine University. She's a high school teacher at Culver City High and has been teaching 33 years. She's taught chemistry, earth science, physics, why can I not speak this morning? In integrated physical science and integrated life science. We have Liz Biscuits, who is, you probably all remember her, our former two-term ASCA president. Liz served in the U.S. Army, 3rd Armored Division, Military Intelligence, Electronic Signal Specialist. That was before her education. She has a bachelor's in biology, a master's of public health, an MA, and all but dissertation in history. She worked for a lab studying muscle structure at Boston University Medical School. She worked 6 years for OSHA, worked 8 years for W.M. Keck Center for Transgene Studies at the University of Notre Dame, and was a teaching assistant at the University of Georgia and is now retired. We also have on our DNA committee Peter Hellmeister, who it does not appear that he's currently on the call because of his location. He has not been able to work with the team very closely yet, but he will act as the European liaison. And then myself as director and the project manager for the DNA Executive Committee. I'm a business owner with a strong background in business operations, management, and accounting. So I am the cat wrangler. The intent of these meetings is to walk alongside the membership as ASCA prepares to transition its DNA program to VGL, which is the lab at UC Davis. Today, we're going to be discussing the contents of phase 1, which was sent out to the membership on December 12th, as was when we announced the new partnership with VGL. We will address how we got here, what it all means, where we're going, and how we're going to get there. This meeting will be kept to 1 hour, as I discussed. Therefore, we ask that questions that you have throughout the presentation are sent via the chat feature. If you go down to the bottom of the screen and hover along the bottom bar, there is a chat box that you can click. It should pop up to your right, and that's where you will ask your questions. Liz will be managing the questions. There was also a Google Forms that was sent out with the announcement to allow you to ask questions in advance of the town halls. Any of those questions will be addressed first, and then questions that arise during this meeting will follow. And there's no cap on the amount of questions that you ask throughout this whole process, we will become stronger and a more value in terms of educational pieces to you if you ask your questions so that the rest of the membership can benefit by them. Not everyone will be able to attend these meetings. So our intent is to have these meetings as a whole transcribed, and that will include the questions and answers. And then Calla will send them out to the membership at the completion of each phase. Okay, let's see. Okay. So the way I keep saying this evening because the last meeting was during the evening. Today, the way the meeting is going to work is I'm going to sort of walk you through the timeline briefly. And then Chuck will discuss some vocabulary, which will be helpful as we navigate together moving forward. So you understand when we're saying, for instance, STR or SNP or SNPs, what that means. Because we will be probably operating at a pretty fast clip, and we acknowledge that we need to onboard everybody. So, and then following that, Chuck will discuss our long-term goals with this DNA Executive Committee as well as the ASCA DNA Parentage Program. And then I will follow in with the logistics, how we move from point A to B. And then Liz will conclude the meeting by managing all the outstanding questions. Okay? So, all right. You all know probably that in 2019, that's when ASCA contracted with Paw Prints Genetics for parentage testing. So I just want to stop because a question came up last meeting, and I want to emphasize that what we're discussing here today is DNA parentage. We are not discussing today trait or color or disease panels. We are we are simply today trying to discuss the current requirement that ASCA has for DNA parentage. So when we contracted with PPG was using Neogen as their lab. There is a distinct difference between a customer interface and an actual lab. In relation to where we're going now with VGL, VGL is the lab and they are also the customer interface. They will deal with the customers directly, so they are one and the same. PPG is a customer interface, as is Oravet. Neogen is the lab. When contracting with PPG, we contracted with proprietary DNA markers. Those markers were specific to ASCA. And Chuck is going to remember, Chuck's going to explain what all this means when we get to his portion of the presentation. Late 23, early 24, it was brought to the board's attention that PPG was not providing verified parentage automatically, as was what was to be delivered. At that time, every year the board will assign 3 people to the DNA committee. At that time, that DNA committee and that committee changes every year. And we'll discuss that moving forward when Chuck talks about our long-term goals. At that time, the DNA committee started researching what was going on with PPG. In March of 25, ASCA received notice that Oravet had obtained PPG and we'd be taking over ASCA's account. It was described to the board at that time that first we got the notice and then we met with them about 30 days after. It was described to the board at that time that Oravet, that PPG was going out of business, that Oravet did not purchase PPG, but that they acquired our account to help out. That was what was described to the board at that time. We were given very little notice. This was not the board's decision. We did not select Oravet. Oravet was imposed is a strong word, but that is how it feels now, that they were basically imposed on us. Oravet promised that all data and tests from PPG would still be available to ASCA and the members. All the members were required to opt in to Oravet, thereby transferring the PPG data to your respective member account. Oravet said all samples taken within 6 months would still be viable. Moving forward, we started working with Oravet to try to see how things were going to go. We didn't really have much notice, so we had no choice but really to try to work with them and see how they performed. At that time, we were starting to learn that a release form provided by Oravet was required for the members to release the data to ASCA. Another point that I would like to make is that with prior, with the exception of Therion, every lab slash interface company that we have worked for and will continue to be this way, the data, the samples are owned by the member. The sample, once you sample your dog and you send in your sample and it is resulted, that data does not automatically belong to ASCA. It belongs to the member, and the member legally has to release that data to ASCA in order for ASCA to receive it. That's very important to know because as we get into the logistics, we are discovering that the majority of the problems that we're having with the release of data is that the members think that once they order the kit, that it is automatically affiliated with ASCA and thereby the data is released, which is not the case. And we'll discuss that further when we get to logistics. Let's see. What we also discovered is that, and this took some months to figure out, because remember, we don't test our dogs every single day. This is sort of a one and done per dog in theory. What we also discovered was that Oravet was starting to retest dogs that already had a PPG DNA profile. So what we started discerning was that the data that they received and the samples that they received were not necessarily viable as they had suggested. So that sort of brings you, oh, and also what I want to share too before we move on to what some of what I just described, what it all means. Oravet uses, remember, Paw Prints was using proprietary markers. Oravet uses the ISAG gold standard markers, which is what VGL, UC Davis, will be using on behalf of ASCA. The good news is any dog that was tested through Oravet and or their PPG panel was retested, or their profile rather retested through PPG, I'm sorry, through Oravet, that is all going to be current and usable data. So given said all of that, I'm going to hand it over to Chuck, and he's going to explain now to you in more layman's terms what all of that means to us today.
Thanks, Jillian. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon to any of the folks that might be in Europe. So what we wanted to do was kind of talk about the vocabulary that we use and some of the facts about DNA so that we make sure that everybody is on the same page as we're discussing some of these topics. And I want to start out by saying DNA markers are known sequences of DNA located at specific positions on chromosomes. They can be used to identify individuals, track inheritance patterns, and associate specific genes with traits or diseases. And two of the DNA marker types that have been used by ASCA approved laboratories are short term or short tandem repeats. And these are abbreviated as STRs, and single nucleotide polymorphisms, which are abbreviated as SNPs. Now, when we talk about STRs, they're short sequences of DNA that are repeated multiple times in a row. And these sequences are analyzed to determine the number in common between a parent and offspring to confirm parentage. SDRs have been around for a number of years. They actually started being used in the early 2000s, excuse me, the early 2000s. And there are some disadvantages of STRs. They are time consuming to actually score the results. They have relatively poor reducibility, and it may be difficult to determine parentage between two closely related sires. Now, the industry is moving towards SNPs, and these are variations at a single base pair in the DNA sequence, and they are the most common type of genetic variation among individuals. These variations are analyzed to determine the number in common between parent and offspring to confirm parentage. SNPs are abundant, stable, amenable to high throughput scoring, and scoring is actually uh, comparable between labs and platforms. And the disadvantage of SNPs are that many more of them are required to discriminate parentage than are required for STRs. Now, SNP and STR results are not comparable in determining parentage. And this was one of the issues with the change from Therion to PPG, because Therion was using STR panels and PPG was using SNP panels. As I said, many of the labs are moving to SNPs, and they're using the International Society of Animal Genetics, or ISAG panels, known as ISAG 2020. And this is what Jillian was referring to as the gold standard. And this profile analyzes 232 SNPs, and it's in two different panels. And these panels are in the public domain, which allows for sharing of data between labs. Now, there are still some labs that use proprietary SNP panels. And if, as you can imagine, since they are proprietary, these data are not out there or are not able to be shared. PPG was one of those labs that used proprietary panels. And AKC also uses a proprietary SNP panel that's exclusive to that organization. And as Jillian mentioned, ISAG 2020 panels are the ones that VGL will be using for DNA parentage for ASCA. And as Jillian mentioned also, that one thing we've learned is that many of the companies in the market that claim to do genetic testing are just an interface with the customer, and they actually outsource the testing to a laboratory. And this whole setup adds another layer of complexity to the process. And going with VGL at Davis, they will be the customer interface and the lab. So if there's any issues during the testing, it'll be easy enough to communicate with them, or they can communicate to the owner of any issues that may come up. We also want to remind people about the DNA CP, which is an ASCA registered Australian Shepherd who has been DNA profiled by an ASCA approved laboratory, but one or both of whose parents have not been DNA profiled by an ASCA approved laboratory. And then DNA VP is an ASCA registered Australian Shepherd who has been DNA profiled by an ASCA approved laboratory and whose parents have also been DNA profiled by an ASCA approved laboratory. So that kind of covers all the um, facts and vocabulary that we wanted to bring out to you guys. And now I'll move into the goals. And our main goal is the lab. So ASCA's had to change DNA parentage labs several times since the inception of the DNA program, which has been in place for 30 years. And these changes in labs have occurred for several reasons, including poor customer service and acquisitions. And so the board believed that we need to bring some stability to the program by going with a well-established laboratory. And so the Veterinary Genetics Laboratory, or VGL, at the University of California, Davis was selected. You may not know, but this laboratory has been around for 70 years and is considered the leading animal DNA parentage verification laboratory in the world. And for these reasons, and being a public entity that will not be acquired or go out of business, we believe they will be around for years to come, which makes them a great partner for ASCA. Another goal that we have is to create and maintain an in-house database of the DNA parentage profiles so they can be easily accessed, housed in one location, and a backup to the portal maintained by VGL. And VGL will send data for each profile, which includes each of the 232 SNP markers and the alleles for that SNP, in a spreadsheet to the ASCA business office on a predetermined schedule. And then those data will be incorporated into the database. And as Jillian said, we had in the past the DNA executive committee, and we're going to continue that executive committee. And it's composed of 3 board members, along with several technical experts. And these experts are Liz and Peter Hellmeister. And we want to make sure that this, between the committee and the experts, that there's continuity for the program. And the plan or the proposal is each of the board members on the committee will be up for election or coming off the board in different years, so that we can maintain the people on the committee that are knowledgeable about the program and have been involved in the program. And then our technical experts will be there continuous. So that's the goals we have right now for the program. And I'll turn it back over to Jillian.
It did that again. It popped up saying that I couldn't unmute myself. Thanks, Chuck. Um, Something that I forgot to mention during the introduction is this is quite a large animal, and we have the executive committee has elected to break this topic down into three phases. So this is the first of three phases. And what is our focus right now is to bring the membership up to speed, as well as to focus and target any cases that might be pending with Oravet. We gave Oravet a 6-month notice per our contract with PPG. And while Oravet indicated that they did not purchase PPG, legal counsel indicates that they are legally bound to, Oravet is legally bound to the contract with ASCA and PPG. Therefore, ASCA will adhere to its contents and gave in December the 6-month required notice to terminate services. We therefore have a time frame that we can work with to nicely close our relationship with them with the intention of clearing out any cases that the members may have. So right now, what we're focusing on is that the upcoming phases will include data that was and profiles that were run through PPG and our relationship with Certigen and how to navigate the new MyVGL portal and how we will go about transferring data and things of that nature. So some of your questions may not get directly answered today because they may fall under a future phase, but I wanted to let you know that logistically, we're going to talk today about what is next with moving data through Oravet. So we have a couple of a breakdown within those within the Oravet cases. We have established a help desk, a DNA help desk, which is, I think, where is the email? I've already forgotten. Does anybody have it quickly? DNA desk at asca.org, something of that nature. Calla will drop it.
Yeah, we'll post it.
We'll post it. It says DNA desk at asca.org. So we have established that email to allow the DNA committee to have access to that. And that is for specific cases. So if you have questions, we have a question from Valerie here that we'll get to in a minute. That is dog specific or case specific. The best place to send those questions is directly to that help desk. All of us access that on the committee and we handle the cases in rotation as they come in. We monitor them, we catalog them so that we can see if there's certain trends or whatnot with the problems. So, what we have discovered is several questions that I'm going to answer right now. If you have purchased a kit through Oravet, please swab your dog, mail your samples into Oravet, and business as usual, because that data, as I mentioned earlier, will be part of one of 3 data transfers moving forward. So again, if you have purchased a kit, whether you have used it or not, some people I know bought some kits in bulk at the National. Please use those. You will not get refunded from Oravet. You are Oravet's customer, and so you purchase those kits, please use them. The only caveat to that is remember the 6-month notice to Oravet. So we will be concluding services with them at the end of April. Therefore, we suggest that you have all of your dogs, all of those kits should be utilized no later than the end of March and mailed so that Oravet has ample time to receive them, result them, and report them. If you have, okay, so That should be very clear about any outstanding cases. You can still purchase kits, by the way. I have a bitch that I went to register the litter and discovered she is not DNA'd. I co-own her. So I purchased a kit just last week from Oravet. It's perfectly fine. It's not, you will not lose the data. However, if you want to roll the dice on these things, you're going to wait till the last minute. We cannot we cannot guarantee your data will be among the three transfers. So we urge you to move those kits forward as soon as possible, but no later than March 31st. Um, Something else that we've discovered through some of the reports that are coming in are you've already sent your information to Oravet, your samples, your dog has already been profiled, but your data, the DNA is not showing up in your ASCA portal. There are three potential reasons for that that are very straightforward. The data that comes from Oravet to ASCA is transferred roughly once a week. Once it's transferred, then the business office will go through and update the DNA data in like weekly. Right now, we're asking as frequent as possible, but no later than weekly. If your data is not coming across, it could be that your data in your Oravet account is not accurate. There are three things that are required in order for the data to transfer properly. Your ASCA ID number needs to be accurate in your Oravet account. Everyone should make sure that your ASCA ID number is accurate. One of the problems that we have found are some people are entering their ASCA ID number, but the account is not maintaining it, so it's not holding. If that is the case, please email Caitlin at Oravet and tell her my ID number is not staying in my account after I populate the field. Copy the DNA desk and we will follow up on your behalf with you. The other two things that have prevented data being transferred are the dog's registered number needs to be the ASCA registration number. In many cases, if you look at your profile, you will have used inadvertently the AKC registration number. Also, so we don't cross-reference AKC numbers. So if your dog's ASCA number is incorrectly inputted, we will not receive your information through a transfer. So make sure that the the E or the N number also are included. Some people have left off the alpha and only have entered the numeric. Additionally, that goes hand in glove with that is the dog's ASCA registered name. It has to be the same as what is on the ASCA certificate. If it is missing a letter or something, remember, these are computers that are communicating. These are not people communicating. If your data is wrong, garbage in, garbage out. If your data is wrong, it will not get transferred to ASCA through the portal. Last, but probably the biggest issue is the release form that I referenced earlier. Oravet has created a release form. Remember, ASCA is not entitled to your data until you give them authorization to release it, and it has to be by way of their release form. I also want to point out that you need to make sure that what you put on the release form is also accurate. If you put the wrong name or ID number, registration number, then very likely what they're updating is not going to cross-reference to your account. Therefore, it's not going to transfer over to ASCA. So very, very important that all of that transpires. The last piece that I'm going to mention today, but we will cover more thoroughly in the future phase, is your PPG certificate. When you opted in, and by the way, this is information. Please be aware that we are learning as we go as well. We did not ask for this merger acquisition to take place, and we were promised some things in the beginning that did not necessarily translate in the end. As it relates to your PPG certificate, when you opted in, your certificate transferred over. Some dogs have been retested through Oravet. I am not referencing those dogs. I'm referencing the dogs that simply their certificate opted in. If your dog's DNA is not being listed in the ASCA portal and your dog has a PPG profile, if any of the data in that profile is incorrect, Oravet cannot correct that because it is encapsulated in a PDF. Therefore, we have created a form that you can fill out that gives ASCA your permission to, we won't modify the PDF we won't modify the PDF. Let's just agree that that's not modifiable legally, but we can have you give us a release form and allow us to correct that data in your dog's ASCA portal or profile. That needs to be handled through the DNA desk. That is not something that it is a one-off scenario. And if you know that your dog falls into that, we can get started on that right now. That is not our focus during this phase, but we will address those if you will go ahead and share that information with us. Um, let's see. Liz, Chuck, did I leave anything out that you want to add before we go to questions? We have 22 minutes left, and we've got a couple questions. You ready, Liz?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. So we only have a couple of questions so far. And the first one, part of that Jill already addressed, but I want to say that if you got your Orivet certificate just a few days ago, it's entirely possible that the office has not gotten to putting in the portal yet. But if you are really concerned about it, you can send the information of the dog to the DNA desk email, and we can check on it and see where it is. If it has something to do with the release, then that's something that the DNA committee would have to address with Orivet. So we can first check with the office and see if they have the information already there and it's just not on the portal yet, and take it from there. Okay. Then will there be a depot in countries outside of the USA to submit the DNA samples? And yeah, it's true that it's getting more difficult and more expensive to mail in and out of the US. But if you're in Europe, the thing to do is to use Certogen. So if you're using Certogen, those results will get to ASCA. And that relationship is expected to continue throughout the throughout this change. And our relationship, then the relationship we're starting with BGL. If you're in another country, I'm not sure how we could handle a depot of some sort. I suppose it's possible if you have a club that they could have a whole bunch of samples brought in one day and then send them all in one pack to the lab. Other than that, I'm not sure how ASCA itself will be able to help with that. Do you agree, Jill? Or
Yeah, what this is something that I've been discussing with VGL, just kind of for a slightly different topic. But what we could start discussing is having maybe a club or two. I mean, Canada is a big country. It's quite
yeah,
expansive. So just because you're in Canada doesn't mean you go to all the shows, every show. But what we could probably navigate is working with some affiliates to host kind of like a collection clinic
yeah,
where we could have bulk samples like Ladine. I know you regularly host stuff and um, at least confirmation shows, but you could conceivably consider being a hub to host one of the collection whatever clinics. And then we can figure out how to mail in bulk to you so we could get bulk kits and maybe get them sent in bulk. We can talk about that moving forward. It's a very good question. I know we talk a lot about Europe, and we do have some things in place for Europe, but we have not really tried to figure out some solutions for Canada. So I'm glad you're asking the questions right now because we will put that on our list to see if we can't coordinate something.
or if it has a depot in Nova Scotia. Yeah, I'm not sure how we can address the issue of the tariffs and stuff like that. Um, yeah, unless you're certified to send live or DNA, it's likely to get stopped at the border. Okay. Well, that is going to require quite a bit of legwork for ASCA to figure out. I don't have an answer for you right now, uh, unless Chuck or Jill have another idea. But we will have to address this with VGL, and we will have to address this um, with with the board at large and all that. So
I,
we
I
need to know this question and make sure that we follow through.
I'll talk to VGL because they do have a scenario that they are working in place right now for Europe. We are not advocating right now for Europe to start using VGL. We are perfectly content with our relationship with Certigen and fully intend to maintain that. However, VGL indicated that they have a scenario in place for Europe. So it is likely that they have something in place for Canada, and we will just have to look into that. So thank you both for your comments and questions on that because that has not been on our radar as of yet.
Right. I don't see any other questions in here. So if somebody else has one,
The
let us know.
so we have 15 minutes left, and it's a fairly small group. So I'm going to answer a question that was submitted previously, and I can't remember if we addressed it already, but previously through the Google Forms, the question was asked, if my dog was VP'd and the data is, its profile is now being transferred, will the dog lose that? Whatever title, DNA title your dog has in the ASCA portal now, that will not change. What may potentially change moving forward is the ability to obtain a VP through VGL until the relative parents are in the database. One thing I didn't mention to you previously, I left out in the introduction, is ask Oravet will be providing 3 data transfers until our relationship with them concludes. We did not feel comfortable with waiting to the end of our contract with them to have them transfer all the data at once to VGL. So what will happen beginning the end of February, the first data transfer will go through, and then there will be 2 following transfers, the last being at the end of our contract term. Why is that important? Because why does that have anything to do with what I just previously said? The data that comes forward in the initial transfer, in theory, should be the bulk. But any dogs that are continuing to be resulted through Oravet through the balance of our contract, that's going to be new data added to our database. So if a dog is a sire of a litter and you want to register it, say in the end of February, the offsprings, you want to DNA them. If the dog's data is not transferred until a successive transfer, it may not show VP until that takes place. Just so that you know, VGL will update the status and ASCA will update the status as that data comes through. We may need to come up with some sort of process to do that. But if you, in the future, if your scenario falls into that category and you have both parents eventually in the VGL database and your offspring is still showing CP, we will explain to you how to go and request that once we get into phase 3 of this. So it is possible to do, but I will ask that people just understand that we are trying to right now work on getting all the cases through Oravet so that they can be included in the upcoming transfers. So that's where our focus lies. It's not that we're not, it's not that it's not important to us, but in order for us to do this correctly, our goal is to take our time and do this correctly and methodically so that ASCA doesn't have to ever do this again. And it looks like you might have a
Yeah,
couple.
we have another question. Yeah. Can we start using VGL for DNA now? Or do we have to use Orbit? My understanding, and Jill can correct me if I'm wrong, VGL is still on track for getting the chips that are going to be used for ASCA samples. So those chips are the ones that are used to actually test the DNA profile of your dog. So VGL is not quite ready yet to start getting samples for ASCA. So in the meantime, you can still send to Orbit, or if it's not something that is urgent, you can always wait for VGL to be online. And I think we're shooting for somewhere where in the spring for VGL to start taking samples.
I'll tag on to what Liz just said. While VGL has the swabs to send out, they do not want your samples sitting around waiting for the chips to come in. As a reminder, VGL has historically used STR technology for their testing. They are, because they are so willing to partner with ASCA, they are having chips manufactured so that they can utilize SNPs for testing. which is the technology that PPG sold us on. Unfortunately, the proprietary markers is what bit us in the rear. So VGL wants to do this correctly too. So they have ordered the chips. They're in manufacturing right now. They believe that they should have receipt of them mid-March. And once we know they are on their way to them, they have sent me some swabs they're going to sample to make sure that before they go live with them, that they're firing correctly, right? There's no
Yes.
misfires. And then at that time, we will give everybody a thumbs up to order the test directly from them. One thing I want to mention is so they are also creating a portal for ASCA, not its members. They are creating a portal for ASCA, not unlike the portal that we have with Oravet and we had with PPG. That's where once you release your data, we can see the information. Um, they are also creating an affiliation. So ASCA will be an affiliate of VGL. You will be a customer of VGL. And when you when you send your swab in, you will mark a little box that says, I'm affiliated. This is to be affiliated with ASCA. And in your account, when you order things and you have stuff on each of your dogs, you will say, I am affiliated with ASCA. If those things are done, then your data will be released to us. You will no longer need a form to release it. You'll be able to do it on your swab specific and your account specific per dog. You'll be able to do it there instead of a form. So we don't want you to prematurely set up accounts. We would like you to wait until we go through the tutorial on how to do that. We ourselves are waiting for the tutorial that will probably transpire in February. Last thing I want to note as it relates to VGL, many of our members already use VGL for trait and health testing.
Health.
Those tests are, to my knowledge, those tests, well, let me that those tests will eventually or may eventually be allowed to be transferred. That is not I'm sorry, be reported. Those are not required by ASCA. The only thing required by ASCA is the DNA parentage. If you have had your dog previously done their DNA parentage through VGL, they use the other technology, the STRs. So that is not useful to us. So if you were to order a kit today, they would be using old technology, and we don't want you to fall into that, unfortunate bucket. So if you wait, if your dog has to be DNA'd because a litter is pending, use Oravet until through March. Otherwise, if you can hang tight, we will have more information on that in phase 3. And maybe we might even be able to have it in the next phase, but right now we do not have clear instructions from VGL yet.
Any other questions?
It's a pretty small group and we have 5 minutes
Yeah.
left. So if anybody has a question and you want to raise your hand, and if you don't know how to use the chat, I mean, it took me like 6 months to learn how to just raise my hand. But you can hover down at the bottom. It says react, I think. Is that right? And you can raise your hand if you want to ask any questions. Otherwise, we'll give it a minute or so. And if nobody else has any further questions, I don't see any hands and I don't see any more chat. So, as just as a reminder, we will have one more town hall on phase 1, which is next week. And then in February, we will have the 3 town hall series on phase 2. Please help to educate your friends, or please help to share the information. Ask them to join the next meeting next week. Tell them if you found this useful. Tell them what you learned. We are learning as we go. And some of you on here I've already been working with, we've already been working with. Um, so we are learning with you, and we appreciate your patience. And we hope that you find value in this new way of communicating with the members. And I think we got a last minute sign on, but we're concluding our meeting now. So does anybody have any further questions otherwise? Or Chuck, Liz, would you like to add anything in closing?
No.
No, I think we covered it pretty well.
Send
Yeah.
your questions, case-specific questions to the DNA desk. We work on them 7 days a week, and we rotate and try to get you the help that you need. And there's no dumb questions, trust me. I had almost all the same questions you all have now. I had them myself. So let us help you navigate through this. Well, we'll sign off then. Thanks everyone for attending. We really genuinely
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.